All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as John Lynch has just finished speaking at the Combine in Indianapolis. And we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. We're also brought to you by Marin Auto Glass, Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, and ValleyHillRoofing.net. All right, let's talk a little bit about John Lynch. He spoke today in Indy just for about 15 or 20 minutes, and he didn't say tons, okay? He didn't say tons. I would say the lead was what he said about Brandon Aiyuk. He was asked about the 49ers wide receiver, and they said the question was phrased something along the lines of, hey, man, the cap has gone up. Does this make it easier for you to sign Aiyuk? John astutely pointed out that the cap went up for everybody. So in reality, it shouldn't change too much. But then he went on to say, we think incredibly highly of Brandon. He's a warrior. And then he finished up by saying Brandon is a guy that we want to keep around for a long time. So if there are any indications on their thinking on Aiyuk, it sounds like they very much would like to retain him long term, which I'm sure makes lots of 49er fans very, very happy. He was asked about the Niners draft strategy. Is it going to be a best player available thing, or are they drafting for need? And he said, guys that fit our culture is what we're looking for. Ultimately, the Niners' needs are at offensive tackle, defensive line, both end and tackle, corner. And then after that, after they fill those needs, I think they'll go best player available. But at the beginning of the draft, where they pick at 30 and they pick in the 60s, I think they're going to be looking for the line of scrimmage, offensive line, defensive line, maybe a corner, and then they'll go best player available. As far as he was asked about Alabama players and, are they a proven commodity and are they, and he mentioned how they're really tested there by Nick Saban and obviously had some nice words to say about Saban, who's opted to retire. He was asked, why is it so hard to get the quarterback pick right? And he said, it's just difficult to project, and there's a lot of differences from the college game to the pro game. And I think ultimately, you just don't know what a player really has between the ears or in his chest or in his experience as far as how he, what he knows about the position until you get him in-house. I think that's really it. That's why teams make so many mistakes. But he was asked about it, and he kind of dodged, but he just said it's hard to project. There's a lot of differences, the different hash marks, the different systems, the different ways the plays are called, so on and so forth. He was asked about player body language in the interviews, and he said, hey, look, don't put too much into the interviews. Be careful not to put too much into it. He mentioned that when he was a player, he used to look down at the end of each play, and a lot of people thought that he had bad body language, and he wasn't even aware of it. So, he said, it's more like, hey, if you get a great feeling about somebody, and he later referenced Jair Brown's interview with the Niners as a phenomenal interview. But he said, don't put too much in that because it's a 15-minute deal. He was asked about Jair Brown, and he went on to say that he made a great impression in his interview with the Niners. They love him. He made an interception in the Super Bowl. He said he didn't pout when he wasn't playing. He played special teams. He fought hard. He got on the field, and he did his work. So they're big fans of Jair Brown. He was asked about Michigan players, and, he mentioned that in a lot of ways, the Michigan cast this year really, kind of typifies this year's draft in that Michigan's got great depth. Now, how many of those guys are going top 10? Probably not too many. How many blue chippers do they have? Who knows? But they had great quality depth, and Lynch seemed to use that as an example for the entirety of the draft, which I completely agree with. I think this is a very deep draft. If I were the 49ers, I would want a dozen picks on day 3 alone, just simply because I really think the guy that you get in the 5th round, 6th round in this draft could be as good or better than the player that you get in the 2nd or 3rd round. And I'd like to have 10 picks on day 3 of the draft just to have that many more bites of the apple. He was asked about, their philosophy as far as their picks and will they go this way or that way. And he said, hey, we want to make all of our picks count. He was asked about Jim Harbaugh. He says, man, he's fun. He's a character. I had a chance to talk to him during one of the commissioners' parties. And he says, he said it a couple times. He thinks Jim's good for the league. He was asked about, the Niners have never really gone interior O-line. Will they target interior O-linemen in this year's draft? And he said, tune in and see. So John's becoming a veteran at this. He doesn't want to show his hand of cards in any way. He was asked about Clint Kubiak moving on to the Saints and just said that he'll be really good for the Saints. He was asked how much pride do the Niners take in having so many of their people poached by other teams, whether to be opposing GMs, assistant coaches, head coaches, coordinators. And he says he takes pride in it, but it's frustrating at times. And I would imagine it would be because you're constantly having to kind of rebuild your own staff and you don't get that continuity that some other staffs do enjoy. I thought it was really interesting. He was asked about, and I couldn't really hear the question, but he was asked about George Kittle in the tight end position. And he just said that he really believes there's great value in tight end and safety, that they're involved in a lot of different plays on the football field. And he said it's a critical position and you need a couple of them. And I think that was kind of a hint that the 49ers are going to be really investigating, looking for a tight end. They went with Braden Willis and Cam Latu last year. Charlie Warner's a free agent. George Kittle's getting long in the tooth. Ross Dwelly's a free agent. I think it's very likely that the 49ers look for their future tight end in this draft. He was asked by, I think, Mayoko, do you try to do your due diligence on who other teams like and how other teams value all these players? And he said, you do that more when you have a top pick like we did a few years ago. Other than that, he says, we try to focus on us. And, there's so many factors. If you try to factor in who likes who and then factor in all the smoke screens and what could be, real, what isn't real, you can drive yourself crazy. And Lynch said, hey, we try to focus on us. When he was asked about the defensive coordinator position briefly at the end, he said Kyle is working on that. They're trying to stay with their scheme, it sounds like, but maybe tweak things a little bit. But really no data of any kind, of any value on any of the candidates, on any of the interviews, on any of the process, on who they like, who they don't like, where they are in the process. He just said that Kyle is working towards that. So it sounds like Lynch and the scouts are focused on the draft and the combine, and it sounds like Kyle is focused on the defensive coordinator and getting that hire done. And then he was asked about stability at quarterback, and he just said, hey, it's a good thing. And now it's about building around the quarterback. So what do you take from that? What I would take from that is that, they obviously feel like they got their guy in Brock Purdy. Now it's about building that fortress around him. The 49ers were 22nd in run block win rate. They were 20th in pass block win rate. They got to be a whole lot better. I mean, there's no question about that. They got to build a line around Brock, and they got to build some more weapons that he can utilize, and they just got to build up their team around their quarterback. But he did say it's a good feeling knowing that they have the quarterback in place, and now the task is more to build around him instead of finding that guy. All right, that's a wrap on pretty much what John Lynch said. Thanks to our sponsors, Pig and a Pickle, and thanks to our other sponsors as well, Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, Marin Auto Glass. Check them out at marinautoglass.com and valleyhillroofing.net. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Thanks to all of you. And thanks for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.